however you wish to self-identify, and welcome back to the Is This, where we dive through DVD bins, sort through streaming apps to find the weird, the bizarre, and the unloved. It's the only podcast brave enough, and yeah, I call this brave, to have a swear word right there in the title, shattering your preconceived notions of what is and what isn't appropriate language. Because what is language? You know, let's break it down in the opening seconds of this recording, because there are actual bad words. There are slurs, there are racial slurs, there are queer slurs that are meant to tear people down. Those are the bad words. Who does fuck hurt other than your conservative uncle or religious leaders? That's the man. We want to keep the man down.
What would hurt our bottom line. Having curse words like in the title is like a marketing nightmare. So if we ever do want to start making some money off of this thing, we might have to legit change our title.
That is true. There are some people who might say we shot ourselves in the foot by having the word fuck right there in the title. They're correct.
It also seems like a little try-hard, a little, like a teenage anarchist kind of vibe that we're going for here.
But we're 49 episodes in, so it's kind of, I don't know, it's too late. Now, that is the eternal question. Is it too late to change the name of the podcast?
Dude, we're closing in on 50 episodes. It may be too late. But funny to point, so for our YouTube uploads, they have this rule where, you'll get dinged in the search results or you'll get demonetized if you swear in the first minute of your recording. So when we do our introductions, normally I'll just interject a kooky sound effect as sort of a weird censor bleep over it. I forgot to do that for our listeners.
Oh man, we're gonna lose so much money.
We're back on their
We're
shit
gonna lose
list.
so much monetization, James. But I mean, that's the thing is we can bleep any word. It might sound, we can make any word sound racy if we just bleep it. There we go. I've bleeped that word in all versions of the episode, the Spotify and the YouTube version. You don't know what word that is. Could be anything.
Why would you censor it on the Spotify version?
Guess who we haven't introduced yet? You want to get in on this with a word?
On words? On
just
language?
any word. Yeah. Oh, okay. Hold on.
It's right into the camera.
Hold on now. Wow. That's going to upset the sponsors. We're going to have to just cut that out. Just cut this whole intro out.
Sorry.
Cut the whole intro out and throw it on the fire. I'm your host, Kaz Lesgard. Joining me always is my co-host, Jameson Rafter.
Hi, how's it going, everyone?
The movie that we are going to watch today, because I have a bit of a story. Maybe I won't jump right into the introduction of the movie. I don't know why I'm being coy about this, because it's in the episode. The movie's Futuresport. It's in the title of the episode. You've already clicked on it. You already know. I don't know why but before we get to that movie, because I do have a story around this movie, before we get to that movie, before we get to new business, let's settle some old business. Which means it's time once again for Probably Should Have Mentioned That. Probably should have mentioned that, This is a segment of the podcast where sometimes we have movies, we watch movies on the show. We always watch movies on the show, but we watch movies on the show, and then after the episode comes out, we find out something cool about the movie that we didn't talk about, and that's what this segment is for here. And on today's segment of Probably Should Have Mentioned That, Jameson, I want to share with you something that I learned about the movie we watched on our last episode, Quest for the Mighty Sword, which was also known in some regions as the third Troll movie.
Sure.
I looked up the filmography of that movie's director, Joe D'Amato, because I wanted to see what other some stuff that he did, some stuff. I looked through his filmography, and I found one movie that I wanted to spotlight on the show right here. It's a movie from 1993 called The Crawlers, which also, much like Quest for the Mighty Sword, has many, many alternate titles. It's also known as Creepers. Mm-hmm. It's also known as Contamination Point 7. And given that Joe D'Amato did uncredited writing and directing work on it, Jameson, can you guess what the other alternate title is?
Well, just from what I remember from his filmography is, he did a lot of erotic films and sexploitation movies, so they kind of went in a very sexy direction, but also a very redundant direction. So there would be sexy erotic love or night passions of a woman in heat and shit like that. So
you're overthinking it. So given the alternate title for Quest for the Mighty Sword, try and guess what this alternate title is. They're connected.
I don't know, Ator 5?
It is not Ator 5.
Son of Ator.
No, Son of Ator was in that movie.
What I was trying to lead you towards, Jameson, that this is yet again another Joe D'Amato movie that is tangentially connected to the Troll universe.
Oh, motherfucker.
It is not Troll 4, because that would make too much sense. The truth is far more stupid than that. The Crawlers is also Troll 3.
But wait, Ator Quest for the Mighty Sword is Troll 3. Wait.
I have no further, it is really sort of an Elseworld situation. I have no further information as to why this is also known as Troll 3. There are no trolls, no goblins in this movie. This is a movie about toxic waste getting spilled on some trees, and the trees come to life and strangle people with their evil tree roots. It doesn't make any sense for it to be called Troll 3, except for the fact that in certain regions, it's known as Troll 3. So I thought that was kind of weird. Anyway, I probably should have mentioned that. Probably should have mentioned that, Rob.
If memory serves, I think the plot of Troll 2 was that the goblins in Troll 2 were actually turning the people of the small town into plants so they could eat them. So this is another sort of quasi-horror shitty movie with people running around in puppets and weird costumes and everything.
And it is plant-related, yeah.
The plants get their revenge.
Yeah, predates The Happening by several years.
It all got ripped off from Troll 2. But anyway, enough about that movie. Let's talk about today's movie, 1998's Futuresport. Now, to give you a little glimpse, a little backstory into this, when I was...
Well, do we want to introduce our guest first?
I will introduce our guest when we get to, when we get to, I know this is a very long preamble. I gave the guest the opportunity to talk. So he's here.
Well, whatever. He's your friend.
He's a great friend. I have a whole build-up. I wrote this out.
Well, I can't wait to hear about him.
I wrote this all down, and I'm building up to it. I'm building up to his introduction. Because he's worthy of a great introduction. And there's lots of build-up to it. So I'll get to it. So let's keep going. I'm going to keep all of this in. As awkward as it is. So when I was a young movie lover, around 13 or 14, I started collecting movie posters. It didn't matter what they were. I would rip them out of magazines, and I would just I had one wall of my childhood bedroom just plastered with movie posters. But by far, the largest movie poster that I had, the one that towered over all the rest of them, was for a movie that I have not seen until this very day. My childhood bedroom was adorned with the grim, determined faces of Dean Cain, Vanessa L. Williams, and a special guest appearance by Wesley Snipes as Hicks, with 2 X's. And hey, speaking of special guest appearances, we have a very special guest appearance of our own. You see what I did there? I tied in Wesley Snipes' special guest appearance to ours. I understand, it's a little highbrow, but our guest...
I also saw what you did. You managed to turn the story of, hey, I had a big poster of this as a kid into this massive epic. So
Thank you. I try. I do work. I do a lot of work. So now at the point where our episode has officially crossed the 10-minute mark, I will introduce our guest. He's an actor, a photographer, a Twitch streamer, and just the nicest fucking guy in the world, Cory Hicks!
Thank you so much for having me, boys. It's the best way to spend a Sunday is watching weird movies.
Oh, glad you could make it.
It's what we like to do.
And talking about it.
And talk about them. That is the formula.
That has been our life for the better part of 3 years.
There's no other show where white men talk about movies on the internet at all.
Covering the spread. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cory, on this show we watch weird, baffling, bizarre, unseen movies with famous people in them, and you're not quite sure why they decided to sign up to that. What would you say is one of the weirder experiences you've ever had watching a movie? What's the most bizarre film you've ever seen?
It was a film introduced to me by the Mystery Science Theater 3000 community, community was introduced to me by our friend Kat Fullerton. So she got me hooked on those movies, and the very first one I ever watched was Pod People. And not only did the DVDs come with the Mystery Science 3000 version, they also came with the real version without any commentary.
In case you wanted to watch it unencumbered by get the full movie experience.
I barely made it. It's so bad. In the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, they mention how there seem to be 4 or 5 movies going on at the same time, and that's the diluted version. With the full film version, it's insane. It's all over the place. And apparently a lot of stuff was added to the film afterwards that the director really didn't enjoy or really approve of, but didn't have any control over. Like, they added a small child and a cute alien as opposed to a terrifying one for this pod people.
So it's the Snyder cut of its day.
Yes. Yeah, it's Snyder cut of Alf. That's what the creature looked like. It looked like one of the Alf costumes that got tossed out. But anything from Mystery Science Theater was odd to me and was almost necessary with the commentary, the comic genius behind it, just getting to, and again, that's kind of, I feel what you guys have tagged on to as well, is just kind of making a weird movie more bearable. and just flat out dissecting it. And just being like, what were they thinking? And why did Dean Cain say yes? Why did Wesley Snipes go, yeah, sure, why not?
Well, I think the answer to both those questions is money. But, there really is, like, you can make these movies that can be absolute directs to get through more bearable if you just, it's easy to just, like, dismiss a movie as it being like, this is bad, therefore I don't know. It's more fun to kind of delve into why it was bad. You know, kind of like to nitpick it and like, why the hell would you do something like that? Because it's fascinating to actually go down this rabbit hole sometimes.
Yeah, looking at a movie with a scalpel and a magnifying glass and with more than one pair of eyes.
I don't know if this statement is going to take away some of my internet cred, what little of that I even do have, but I've really tried really hard over the years to get into Mystery Science Theater 3000. I've never really cracked it. I think the big issue, I admit that they are sort of the forefathers of what we're doing here. I think my big issue with Mystery Science Theater is that they often always choose the most boring movies. And for me, it's never quite enough. Their quips are never quite hilarious enough to keep my attention for an entire screening. I love sort of the interstitial stuff they do. I find the skits really charming. I love the crappiness of the puppets. But when the movie starts about 10 minutes in, I'm very often just quite bored, and I'm waiting for them to quip, and the quip is never quite good enough for me to become an MST3K fan, so to speak. So I apologize to everyone out there who is logging off of our podcast now that I've talked shit about that.
Bye.
We're losing listeners by the ones.
No, I think with MST especially, it is a desired taste, and I think I just got the right bait when the hook was dangled in front of me. I think I got the right films to really set me in and go, okay, I love this. But I completely agree that there are some big misses in the Mystery Science Theater world where it was just like, this didn't even need to happen.
I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fanatic of those. I really appreciate like what they've kind of done for the project that you and I have started here, Kaz. You know, like they were as you said, the forefathers of doing this. They were the pioneers. And really no one had written the playbook on how to do this sort of thing. So they just had carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want. Like, yes, we'll have us riffing over movies, but we're also gonna have puppets, you know? And I think like since then, like, you know, guys like How Did This Get Made and the Red Letter Media guys, they've sort of like found ways to carve their own path out of that without including puppets and stuff. But I think it's, you know, you gotta pay like some reverence to the people who did it beforehand. And you know, maybe some groups have come along that do it more efficiently or just in a different style or tone, but I think it's a deep pool that you can get into for B-movie criticism.
Yeah. So. I mean, we do follow in their footsteps. I mean, I think what a lot of people don't realize, given that this is an audio medium, is that I'm a puppet. I've been a puppet this entire time. It's just sort of impossible to tell because there's no visual element to this show. So, you know, we are sort of following.
I mean, there is the YouTube thing, but like, yeah, that's mainly just like
we just fixed that in, we fixed that in post. I've hired someone to portray me for the still images. I'm going to get off this train immediately and get on.
To call yourself a puppet, it does seem like you are now like mass produced. Because I gotta say, guys, you look very similar to me.
Yeah, no, we're cut from the same cloth, Cory and I. Certainly, yeah. I'm West Coast Cory, and he's in I wouldn't call him East Coast because he's just one province over from me, but you know,
I'm looking at two bald, bearded men.
You need one of them in every friend
group. By the end of this podcast, I will have adopted the guys as well.
We need one of those in every friend group, which is part of the reason why I moved to Vancouver. Because as I got older, I looked in the mirror and I'm all like, I am becoming another Cory Hicks. So I'm all like, okay, well I need to spread the Hicks around. Spread those hickeys. Anyway.
That sounds like Alberta.
Can't wait to meet Manitoba
yeah,
Kaz and Ontario Kaz.
They are all there.
So, Futuresport, 1998 television movie, directed by a good director. I'm really excited to talk about this filmmaker. I think he's underrated, really important filmmaker. I think a lot of people would kill for the career that this gentleman has had. This movie is directed by Ernest R. Dickinson, who has had a long and varied career, had a ton of different titles and jobs within the filmmaking career. He started off as a cinematographer. Primarily, he was the main director of photography for master filmmaker Spike Lee, charting all the way back from his debut 1983 student film, Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershop, We Cut Heads, all the way to his 1992 masterpiece, Malcolm X. And 1992 was a really key year for Ernest R. Dickinson because not only was Malcolm X his final movie as a cinematographer, it was also his debut as a director and to date his only writing credit, the 1992 cult classic crime thriller Juice, starring Omar Epps and Tupac Shakur. I believe it was Tupac's first film as an actor. It's a movie where you go back and you watch it now and you absolutely realize, I mean, like, obviously, the fact that Tupac was murdered is its own tragedy, but, you know, a sub-tragedy on top of that is you watch Juice and you realize, damn, that guy was fucking talented. That guy was a good actor, and he would have had an amazing career as an actor had he not been murdered in the streets, probably by the cops. Political. Moving on. Some other movies that Ernest R. Dickinson directed.
Wasn't it Suge Knight?
He directed.
Whatever.
I don't know. We're not getting into the conspiracy behind Tupac's murder on the show, mainly because we are wildly unqualified to talk about that.
What have you brought me into?
We're not going to get into conspiracy, but just enough that I can make that dig at the cops.
Well,
Moving
any
on.
opportunity you can. All cops are bad. Anyway, I want to talk about Ernest R. Dickinson's filmography because he's directed some really cool movies. I think they're all worth mentioning, however briefly. So the other movies he directed include 1994's Surviving the Game, where Ice-T plays a homeless man who is hunted by a bunch of rich assholes, including Rutger Hauer, Gary Busey, and others. That movie's fucking awesome.
I've heard that that's a nice, funny action movie.
I wouldn't call it funny. It's more the brutal and violent and has lots of social commentary about how black people are treated in society, how society treats homeless people in general. It has an amazing 2-page monologue from Gary Busey, who plays, unsurprisingly, a psychotic madman. That movie's great. Another movie that he directed that is great, he directed the good Tales from the Crypt movie Demon Knight, starring Billy Zane. That movie is also awesome. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I'm gonna make it. Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight is Billy Zane's finest performance as an actor. That movie is the strongest argument anyone has ever made for Billy Zane, the movie star. He is so funny. He's so scary. And then I watched that movie around Halloween this year. That's a great creature feature.
Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah.
Jada,
Charles Fleischer, yeah.
Jada Pinkett Smith. William Sadler. Yeah.
William Sadler.
I actually agree. I feel that would still hold up to this day, even if I watched it now, compared to the other Tales from the Crypt movies.
Yeah, Bordello of Blood. I watched both of those for the first time this Halloween, and I was blown away by how much I was enjoying Demon Knight. And then the next night I watched Bordello of Blood, and it's just night and day. Like, that's a terrible movie. I barely remember anything about it. It does have something to do with one of them, you know, your lead actor is William Sadler, and then the other one, your lead actor is Dennis Miller. That may have had something to do with it. So some other films he directed 1996 buddy comedy Bulletproof, starring Damon Wayans, kind of at the tail end of his popularity, and Adam Sandler right at the beginning of his popularity. And he also directed early 2000s horror movie Bones. Remember Bones with Snoop Dogg as a ghost pimp?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Jimmy Bones.
Jimmy Bones!
Jimmy Bones.
My statement on Bones is that I'm going to go ahead and call that an admirable failure. That was a big swing, because despite the fact that it's about a ghost pimp, I think maybe where that movie kind of went off the rails is that they tried to play that very straight. They very much tried to make Jimmy Bones kind of a Freddy Krueger type character who would keep coming back. I appreciate that they really tried for that. It didn't quite all convalesce. But, nonetheless, just Jimmy Bones, the Ghost Pimp. He's directed some other movies. He's directed just a ton of movies for television. Futuresport is the third movie that he directed for television in 1998 alone.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
he's wildly prolific.
Busy year.
But basically, after this point, he kind of moved into his sort of third career, which is directing episodes of television, where, unsurprisingly, he has been wildly successful. Like, basically, name any TV show from, 2004 to today, he's probably directed an episode of it. He's directed episodes of The Wire, The Walking Dead, Dexter, The L Word, Criminal Minds, CSI Miami, Heroes, ER, Weeds, Law and Order, The Vampire Diaries, Once Upon a Time. Do you remember that miniseries Masters of Horror, where it was they got the directors, like John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper to come and every episode was an hour-long horror movie?
Yeah.
He directed one of those. He's just done everything. And it has all come back to 1998's Futuresport, which has adorned the wall of a young, wide-eyed movie lover named Kaz Lesgard.
And you can finally scratch that off the bucket list.
This is the circle closing itself, really.
Yeah, he sounds like the very definition of a journeyman actor.
Yes.
Journeyman director, rather. Just someone who will, he'll show up, he'll do the work, and you'll get solid, competent work. And, he's been working in film his entire life. So he's a good guy to have around on the set. He's probably a very calming presence to the cast and crew.
He shot Malcolm X, for fuck's sakes. This is big important director. And we're watching what looks to be one of his weirder movies. I can't speak for the quality yet because I haven't seen it, but
I've seen the trailer for it, and holy shit, that is a hard fucking trailer to get through. That is seizure-inducing. I do not recommend anybody watch that.
Get that beginner CGI going. Or just strobes.
It is strobe effects for all the cuts. It is rough.
I don't really have much to say about this movie. It looks it's called Futuresport, which is the most generic sort of sci-fi title you can give to it.
If they're playing it now, wouldn't it be called Now Sport? Because then the future sport would be in the future.
That is the other thing to bring up. This movie is set in 2025. And I thought rather than wait, because who knows how long we're going to be doing this podcast, rather than wait, Jameson, until 2025 to cover this, and then we can be all like, well, it didn't turn out like that, I figured we could cover it now.
You might be announcers for Future Sport.
We can at least hope that this is our future coming up, and then fairly soon we will... I don't even know what the Futuresport entails.
No, but, this could just be a cautionary tale. We're gonna look at this and haha, can you imagine what they imagined? Can you believe this is what they thought 2025 was gonna be like? And fuck, they were right. We should have heeded the warning.
There are a lot of similarities.
Why didn't we listen to you, Wesley Snipes?
Why didn't we listen to the words of Hicks?
Yeah.
Alright, well I don't really have anything much more to say about the movie. There's not other than the 3 stars on the poster, there's not really any other actors of note in this. Before we go into the movie, I do want to ask you guys, given that his billing is very specifically special guest appearance by Wesley Snipes as Fix with 2 X's, I just want to take some bets. How many scenes do you think Wesley Snipes is actually in this movie? Do we think it's one scene, or do we think he'll be in multiple parts of the movie?
I'm guessing 3.
3 scenes from Cory. All
I'm
right.
also seeing that Wesley Snipes was also a producer.
So maybe he'll be in more.
Or maybe less, because he was already making money by doing nothing. By putting his name on the project. They're like, oh man, you've already shown up for half the day.
Dickinson and Snipes are friends because, of course, Dickinson shot the Spike Lee movies that Wesley Snipes starred in. So obviously they've worked together in the past before, but yeah, he is, and he's not even executive producer. He is the main producer of this movie. And it's also worth noting that this is Wesley Snipes at the apex of his popularity. This is the same year Blade came out.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask, at what point, would this be about, the time where he was, just propelled as, an action star? So he would probably not have the time to do, or to commit himself to a TV movie. So to answer your question of how long you think he's in this movie, or I think he'd be in this movie, I would say he's in one scene, but it's a long scene.
All right, good. Yeah, those are both. I could see, I could see either or of that happening. Yeah.
Or he's in one big scene, and then there's just pre-recorded footage of him like projected on a screen as sort of like the president of the world or something, or like, you know, he's not having a conversation with anyone, but he's just like always on a television giving like these sermons.
That sounds good to me. That's a good guess.
Because we've watched a couple of sci-fi movies that are
so
like,
one big Snipes scene and then many interstitial hologram Snipes scenes. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, there's only one way to find out exactly how much Snipes is in Futuresport, and that's to watch Futuresport. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a little break here, and when we come back, we'll tell you about what happens in the far-off future of 2025.
Our first sports movie. I'm looking forward to it.
As a young man, I spent about 6 years living and working in Calgary, Alberta. While I personally hadn't quite realized my own proudly queer identity yet, that didn't mean I didn't notice the absence of any sort of LGBTQ community while I was down there. This was about 10 years ago, so things might have been different back then. That's why I was happy to learn about the End of the Rainbow Foundation, a Calgary-based organization that exists to improve socio-economic conditions for people of diverse sexual orientations, gender identities, or gender expressions. They connect LGBTQ people and refugees entering Canada to volunteers and sponsor groups that provide employment, education, and other training services. They're dedicated to educating the public about all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions through educational, cultural, and human rights classes, seminars, and workshops. They have a variety of social and support groups, such as Positive Spaces, where transgender, transitioning, intersex, and non-binary folks can engage with each other socially in a safe environment while gaining confidence needed to socialize in more public places. Or True Colors, where they curate fun, immersive, activity-based events and social gatherings to engage with people face-to-face and foster friendships. The End of the Rainbow Foundation cultivates spaces that are free of racism, misogyny, sexism, homophobia, ableism, xenophobia, transphobia, and judgment. To donate, visit endoftherainbow.ca, or to donate to their COVID-19 relief fund, visit endoftherainbow.ca/donate to minimize the COVID-19 impact. And we're back! We're back from the distant future of 2025, and Jameson, Cory, it's hard to believe this podcast will actually replace war.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to believe this game will actually replace war.
All wars.
All wars now. The wars between the other podcasts. People have been coming at us for copying their ideas, but this podcast alone will change all of that. There will be no following this no war ever. We figured that out.
You will not be the future sports of the speedball genre.
Oh man!
Well, what did we think of that mid-90s made-for-TV masterpiece?
It was so Canadian.
Yes.
And I loved that. Because it was so subtle, but it was just enough to be like, wow, I think when we say North America, we mean mostly Canada.
Yeah.
They're using our arenas for these future sports now. And the Canadian...
They're using our arenas.
Yeah, and
they're using our libraries.
Our hollow announcers.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, like, this movie is set in, like, the future New Orleans, but no, this was clearly Vancouver, with plenty of Vancouver landmarks in attendance. All the sports broadcasts are, like, bilingual, like...
The sports especially really felt like I was watching them on the CBC.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, it's time to play Futuresport.
And that's okay.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Bienvenue.
Bienvenue. It was just so, yeah, just even the intro and even his clothes. Although a floating head of John Cherry would have been pretty great. Just saying.
Yeah, at least
it
there
is
would have been
odd because...
another, like, you know, co-host of the sports broadcast. Normally it's not just one host covering all facets of the game, including, like, preamble, the play-by-play, the color commentary. One dude.
He could have been cloned.
Uninterrupted. Yeah.
Just doing
with
it
the
with
camera
himself.
face, like, on him at all times, too. Like, normally when, like, you know, someone's covering the game, they're not on camera. The camera is focused on the game itself.
No, that would be much too expensive. We'd rather use the magic
We
of
gotta have a
off-camera.
hologram of a dude projected onto the field, or onto the rink.
His entrances into the scenes were hilariously done.
They were great. Yeah, whoever is in charge of editing this hologram French-Canadian announcer into the games, like, the editing is phenomenal. Someone will score a point, and then milliseconds later, the announcer, he'll sort of phase into existence right next to the goal and be like, that was an amazing play.
Their transitions, it's great.
Oh, man.
Just to remind you that he's in this movie, and this is who you're listening to
That's
speaking.
Ronnie
It's
Vance,
great.
ladies and gentlemen. Ronnie Vance.
Ronnie Vance.
This was something that I omitted looking up before we watched this, but yes, this movie is aggressively Vancouver. From the opening shot, the Vancouver Public Library is a pretty easy landmark to recognize in whatever movie it pops up in. And it pops up in a lot of them because if you're not familiar with the Vancouver Public Library, the main branch of it anyway, it's this big Colosseum-looking building that's sort of like a half circle. It does sort of look like a gladiator arena of sorts. And they use this one location for multiple settings in this movie. I recognized about 3 different times they were just using different parts of the library.
Right, angles, yeah, different sides.
Yeah.
People's apartment buildings. It was the VPL, and it was also the theater lobby at UBC. Was Ramsey's future apartment. I recognized that as well, too.
Yeah. Which, I gotta say, like, kudos to this movie, like, good use of, I gotta say, the production design of this movie was actually pretty good. And I don't know if that is just aping off a lot of the Vancouver architecture that just makes everything look a little bit slightly futuristic if you know how to dress it well enough. But, no, for like a made-for-TV movie, it looked alright.
Yeah, it didn't feel like TV too much.
I don't know if that's just me being a proud local boy or not, but it looked alright to me. So that's a point in the win column for me so far.
It didn't look like a TV movie too much, except for the abundance of fade black for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
Where it really seemed like they front-loaded the commercials into the first half of this movie, because I noticed like 5 commercial fade to blacks within the first 20 minutes alone, and then they seem to stop for a while. So I don't know why the ad breaks were placed where they were. It was very distracting, though, watching this on YouTube.
I think part of the course for most of the TV movies are that you really want to keep the audience invested in the first, maybe hour or so. Maybe have 1 or 2 commercials. But then as the movie starts to wrap up, you just bombard it with more commercial interruptions.
They flipped it. Yeah, they did the opposite of the way that normally happens.
Yeah, I really liked this movie.
I was entertained. I was surprisingly entertained throughout it, and with a few of the performances too.
So we all made our predictions. All of us turned out to be fantastically wrong. Wesley Snipes in this movie quite a bit. He is sort of the secondary lead, one might say.
Yeah. He snuck in. Yeah, it was very surprising.
Yeah, he is less a featured actor and definitely a supporting role in this. And I think when it kind of dawned on us that he was also a producer in this movie, that's where he sort of had the producer ego trip and said, well, I want to be featured in this. And because I'm sort of the main driving force of getting this movie made, I'll do it, but I want to do my character with a Jamaican accent the whole way through.
I wouldn't even feel confident enough, Jameson, to say that was a Jamaican accent. I don't know what accent Wesley Snipes was going for.
And then turned into Hermes from Futurama later on.
This is not an exhibition game or a pro game. This is a straight-up territorial fight.
Whatever it was, he wanted to do it,
yes.
And he seemed to really enjoy doing it.
Just showed up day one with that voice, and they're like, "Oh, all right then."
Since we're still sort of on this subject, let's talk super briefly about the billing. The above the title billing, because it's very odd, because there are sort of 3 above the title actors in this, and you would think, given their roles and how often they show up in the movie, the billing that would make the most sense would be Dean Cain, Vanessa L. Williams, and Wesley Snipes. He just gets the simple, clean, and Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
But what's confusing is that the billing goes Dean Cain and Vanessa L. Williams with special guest appearance by Wesley Snipes, What? This is baffling. Like, what? Did their agents get into a room and just start yelling at each other? Who got the and here? Because this makes no sense, the way that it shakes out.
Like, do Vanessa Williams and Dean Cain share top billing, and they just wrote it that way because alphabetically it makes sense?
Yeah, I have no answers. I've never quite seen a 3-person billing shake out like that before.
It always feels like the featured special guest is more of a TV thing than a movie thing. So it seemed really out of place in that respect.
But you do, when you see that, it does give one the impression that we all got, that a guest appearance is just that. Yeah. They show up for maybe 5 minutes and then they retreat back into the background. But no, Wesley Snipes is all over this movie. You can't stop the fix. Yeah. The fix is out. We can go into the plot of this, but since we are on the subject of Wesley Snipes, I loved sort of his recurring bit of saying lines that had nonsense D words in it. I counted 3 times that it happened. Near the beginning, he's being interviewed by Vanessa Williams, and then when Dean Cain shows up, everyone turns their attention over to him, which marks the only time in recorded history that Dean Cain has ever been more popular than Wesley Snipes. But that's the first moment it happens. He says something along the lines of, well, Dean Cain's here. No one gives a ding-dang diddly about me. Actually, no, I think I'm not. No, he says that later. What he says is well, everyone cares about Ramsey. I'm just doo-doo.
Trey's ratings. I'm just doo-doo.
Yeah.
So he says, I'm doo-doo. He says, they don't give a ding-dang diddly about me.
Don't give a ding-dong diddly.
And then later on, he says, dead man can't earn dada.
Yeah.
Dead man can't earn dada.
So it's I really wanted more of that. He only gave us 3 of them, but it's all come on, man, what more nonsense D words can you slide in there with your indecipherable accent of unknown origin?
The LA Rush needs a coach. No way, man, not my thing. No, besides, I think the Rush, they have someone who's a dingy of a coach.
Are they nonsense words, or are those terms from whatever island dialect he's going with here? I don't know.
Very Ned Flanders-y of him. That's a great way to seg over to talk about the plot of this movie, because there do appear to be island nations in the far-off future of 2025. I'm going to cede the floor for a bit, just because it's apparent, given this episode, how much I've talked too much already, but were either of you able to decipher the plot of this movie a little bit better than me? Because I'm pretty lost about a lot of central plot points, mainly the antagonists. I don't really know why the central antagonists were doing any of the things they were doing. So do either of you want to take that?
They just showed up on the scene, and I knew he was the bad guy because he had the face tattoo. And he was telling everyone what to do. They had a secret hidden compound for some reason.
Okay, so what I was able to piece together outside of the world of Futuresport is that in this time period, Hawaii is trying to secede from the US. And they have the backings of all the other Pan-Pacific nations. And in the movie, Hawaii has this insurrectionist terrorist movement trying to disrupt the U.S. government in Hawaii. It's a huge sticking point. It is the most talked about controversy in this future reality. And people's distraction from it is the great American pastime of Futuresport, which is this, oh god, it's an international sport, I guess, because every, major city in the U.S. has a team, and every other country in the world has a team that will play into it.
It seems global. It seems, it's not necessarily the all-American pastime. It is very pointedly the all-North American pastime. America seems to get lumped in with the entire continent.
Yeah, it's like the World Cup in that regards, but also there would be a regular season. So teams would meet up multiple times a year, and then at the end of the season there's a postseason, and then there's a championship game, but I guess there's also exhibition games, because that's what Dean Cain eventually sets up for the rights to, claim Hawaii for either North America or the Pan-Pacific. I don't know. Yeah,
I have a simple solution to all of this.
Is it Futuresport? It's Futuresport,
but
isn't it?
interestingly enough, like, it's not that harebrained. I mean, it's a harebrained idea, but conflict resolutions are in the origin of the sport because Wesley Snipes' character, who was the creator of Futuresport, made
Obakai Fix.
Yeah.
2 X's.
Yeah, so he created this sport in the down zone, which I suppose is sort of like the rough part of town, you know, the like sort of like below poverty level kind of.
The implied ghetto of the future.
Yeah. So he created this sport as a means for rival gangs to squash their beef over a friendly game rather than like turf wars and such. And its popularity blew up to the point where now it is the most popular sport in the world.
Seemingly the only sport in the world.
Yeah.
Like we don't hear about anything else. We know that at the very least basketball did exist up until 5 years previous to this, because that is where Dean Cain came from. Dean Cain, professional basketball player. First of all, sure, that's something that I believe happened.
Yeah.
Dean Cain is about as believable as a professional basketball player as he is being a quarter Egyptian, which is also a claim that he makes in this movie.
Well, no, they said he was like half Hawaiian, but I guess his nickname...
Hawaiian, thank you.
Yeah.
I got confused because his name is literally Ramses.
Yeah, but his nickname Pharaoh comes from the fact that like that is, I guess, his nickname like in the rink, and you know his girlfriend gives him like this Egyptian style amulet medallion that has a computer chip on it or something for luck. Which backfires. But yeah, so, outside of like the actual ongoing war in Hawaii, there's the championship game between the LA Rush and Team Germany. And the star player of the sport in general is Dean Cain's, what's his name? Like, Trey Ramsey?
Trey Ramsey.
Yeah.
With, I believe there's also an unnecessary Z in there as well, so.
Oh, yeah, they were really pushing for the Egyptian.
Yeah. And he's like this hot shit star athlete, like a real like ego about himself. He goes to the game, and I guess like some insurrectionists from the Hawaii Liberation Front or whatever storm the game, call him out as like someone who did crimes against Hawaii, which is never really elaborated on. He foils their terrorist plot because that's just something that, you know, a pro athlete can do. Which
he foils the terrorist insurrection attack through Futuresport because he hops on his hoverboard. I just gotta say, there's a lot of scenes in this movie where someone gets hit in the face with a future ball. It made me laugh every time because there's no weight to these things. No. It's just obviously someone getting smacked with a wiffle ball and then reacting twice as hard as they need to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so stupid. Like, fuck. There was this cartoon show on, I think in the early 90s called Pro Stars.
Yeah, I remember that shit.
Yeah, it starred, like, legit starred, it was an animated show, but it starred Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, and I think Bo Jackson.
Yep,
Bo Jackson.
They were all like fucking superheroes and something, using their own respective sports to like save the day. Which is, I guess, essentially what I thought this movie was gonna end up being.
I can't say for certain that Pro Stars was a cartoon based on a cereal. All I remember is that there was indeed a Pro Stars cereal, and I got the entire set of Pro Stars trading cards because of that cereal, including a trading card for Mom, the elderly mechanic who was sort of the Pro Stars Q, who made all of their inventions. I had Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, and Mom.
Yeah, that was Pro Stars was a General Mills, and it was Wayne Gretzky's invention, and then it was just tied into the cartoon, and it tasted exactly like alphabets.
Sports Bomb!
That is funny, Cory. I remember the taste of Pro Stars. That is wild.
General Mills, we got one wheat taste for all our cereals, and then we're just gonna add stuff. Marshmallows!
So, the big game starts, and we get our first glimpse of what Futuresport actually is. And what it ostensibly is Quidditch on hoverboards.
Yeah, but pointedly, this movie came out years before the first Harry Potter book was written, so I think we have a new thing to be mad at J.K. Rowling about. She ripped off Futuresport.
Yeah, she was watching fucking Sci-Fi Network while visiting Vancouver, and it just happened to get the inspiration for Quidditch. Oh man, I just love the implication that in this universe, Wesley Snipes invented a game where No, he invented skateboarders hucking baseballs at each other,
Into
which
metal
I'm sure
sheets.
fucking happened at least once or twice while they're messing around in the skate park. And he's like, no, we put some goals or rings for them to huck the ball through. We'll put some padding on them and some numbers on their back. I think we got a sport here. But this sport is fucking ridiculous. If you hold on to the ball too long, it's called riding the lightning because then you get an electrical shock.
Ride the lightning. Maybe it's just hard to come up with a sport just off the top of your head that doesn't involve putting a ball in a hole in some way. Maybe it's just genuinely hard to come up with a future sport, and that's why now that we have two different sources doing it, it's kind of exactly the same basic principle. It is so funny how much future sport is like Quidditch in so many ways.
There even are people like in the game whose job it is to just go around. Like, you're allowed to tackle people off their boards. You're allowed to hit them with fucking quarterstaffs in the game.
Metal quarterstaffs instead of sticks.
Why do they have quarterstaffs? What reason is there for them to have metal pole?
Yeah, but I think one of the funniest things to me about just like watching the games is like, it's nothing but net in these games. Like, you'd think in like a regular sport where like you're going at however fast you are on this hoverboard, you huck the ball at this small little hole in a ring, you know, it might deflect off the post or whatever, or it's the goaltender's gonna catch it. No, every fucking shot is nothing but net.
It's such a tiny hole. They must be throwing these balls with such a tremendous amount of accuracy for them to get as many points as they do. Or one might imagine there might be some sort of like magnetic force or whatever that helps the balls go through the hole. I mean, with Quidditch, there's magic involved. So you have a certain level of disbelief there where you can be all like, well, I suppose that makes a certain amount of sense, given that they are flying through the air.
I think a high-scoring game like this would actually get kind of boring for me. And, you know, that's precisely why I don't like basketball. Like, the last 4 minutes of a basketball game are the most exciting part of the game for me. That would be the exact same thing for Futuresport.
My two questions about Futuresport are, I'm somewhat confused as to why some of the players have full-on futuristic hoverboards while other players are just on regular old-fashioned rollerblades. I don't know why everyone isn't using the same equipment. I mean, half of the people in Quidditch aren't riding brooms, and the other half are just running around on the field. They all have the same advantage, one imagines.
I think it might depend on what position you're playing in the game. There's a part near the end where, kind of jumping forward here, but like the athletes go off and fight the fucking terrorists. One of the guys whose job it is in the game to like whack people with the batons, he saves his teammate and he says, we're always holding the hand of you flyers. Are the flyers the people that ride the hoverboards and are in charge of like, they're the forwards, and the people who have the batons, they're on the rollerblades and they're acting as defense? Is that it?
I guess maybe there's a certain amount of mobility that you have on a hoverboard that you don't have on rollerblades. So yeah, I guess like certain players are fulfilling certain tasks that the other ones can't, given what everyone's position is. My other question is, we see this sort of flashback news report sort of about like the origins of Futuresport, and we can see its inception, and before it gets all futuristic, we see Wesley Snipes sort of coaching people, and Dean Cain is there, but it's just on a regular skate park, and it's just using regular skateboards. So my question is, how far along are we with the hoverboard technology? Were hoverboards invented after the invention of Futuresport, or did we start off with skateboards and hoverboards already existed and then they were integrated into the Futuresport at a later date?
I think the latter. I think like this game was pioneered in, you know, like in the ghettos, so they didn't have access to hoverboards. Once the whole sport got, you know, incorporated rather, that's when they had like an influx of money, and that's when they put hoverboards in.
You know.
It was just known as present sport when they were on skateboards.
Yes. Current sport.
Current sport.
Whatever you got lying around, sport.
So, Dean Cain, he's like the star athlete, team captain of the LA Rush. He's not much of a team player. You know, his teammates open in the championship game. He chooses not to pass the ball to him. Then he gets like fucking tackled, and his big rival Blake from Team Germany intercepts, scores, and the LA Rush lose the game. And that's, I guess, sends Dean Cain in a bit of a downward spiral where losing one game costs him his sponsorship and his fiancée. And
everyone just immediately shits on him because they've lost one game. It seems like the most...
though, wasn't it? I do remember him saying that the next championship he would propose to this girl, and she was like, you don't got another season in you.
Yeah, but she's like, I guess like their version of a social media influencer, because she kept talking about her popularity index, and now that he's like lost a game, it would be bad for her image if she were engaged to this guy. Even though he's still like the top fucking athlete in the sport. You can be the number one athlete in the sport and your team can still lose. That's entirely possible.
But if you lose, it's entirely your fault. Yes. And no one else is to blame.
Well, it's entirely his fault because he's not a team player.
Yeah, and that's Dean Cain's arc in this. We see him lose the first game because he is showboating and he is taking all of the goals for himself, and his arc, as we learn over the course of this Futuresport championship, is to somewhat learn some humility and become more of an assist player than necessarily the person who makes the slam dunks,
the playmaker,
or whatever the hell they call it in Futuresport. But it ends up not mattering that his fiancée leaves him because Vanessa Williams is right there, who is already his ex-girlfriend, and in the opening scenes seems primed to immediately and easily step back into the girlfriend role. So much so that you wonder why they even wrote the fiancé character to begin with.
Yeah, she picked up those pieces pretty quick.
Well, it's odd because pre-game she has this interview with Dean Cain, and she's asking him like a pointed question, and he immediately turns the tables on her and says, "Well, hey, like, remember, what did he say?" Like, he said something like really douchey.
Yeah.
10 years ago, Tremaine Farrow-Ramsey became an overnight media sensation after Channel 9's report on an obscure game called Futuresport. Now he's captain of the LA Rush and here in New Orleans for his third consecutive World Futuresport Championship. Mr. Ramsey.
Mr. Ramsey? You know, Alex, I know you were ticked off when I dumped you, but I mean, we have not really reached the Mr. Ramsey point, have we?
Cut.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't remember what anyone said in this interview because I was just transfixed by the camera operator. Yeah. Now, this is a trope of sci-fi that has popped up in a bunch of things where it's the futuristic camera operator, but the camera is his head. Yeah. The camera is in his head. I've never quite seen it pulled off quite as slapdash and as lazily as this movie does. He looks like a Cenobite from Hellraiser, is what he looks like.
Terrifying. I still remember the wedding photographer from Futurama where, I am the camera, please act natural, and he's right in front of your face.
Yeah, he looked like he had a toilet paper tube glued to his face.
And I couldn't quite tell if he was supposed to be a robot or an android because, or if this is just what all cameramen in 2025 have to put up with.
Get the surgical implant to like legally mold to the side of the face.
I love old future technology, like movies from the past that imagined what the future would look like, because it's not completely outside the realm of believability that you could have some sort of implant nowadays where the camera is literally what you're seeing, but it wouldn't be this big, bulky, fucking Nikon fucking camcorder that's taking up literally half of your face, and it must be top heavy, like, it must weigh him down. It would be small enough that it would just be his eye. Yes, Cory is giving us a visual example of this now by holding a cup up to his head. That is roughly the size of it.
Mine for you folks.
It's like, no, we're not going to remove anything. It's just going to be outside of your face.
Since we are talking about Vanessa Williams' reporting, I wanted to mention one of my favorite lines from her where she's sort of giving us the rundown on how Futuresport works. She's sort of doing her reporting. She says the line,
Futuresport. 2 teams, 5 players each, and only one way to score. Put the ball in the goal.
I just thought that was delightfully redundant. You can say that about literally any sport.
What a novel idea.
That's the
Future
general
Sport,
idea.
Get rid of the hole, then figure it out. Now what are you gonna do? That's the future.
You didn't mention, Jameson, you mentioned sort of the rival captain of the team. You didn't mention the other rival teammate, Hatchet Jack Jameson.
Yeah, watch
We
out
were
for
all
Jameson,
very excited
for
because...
Jensen, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so excited when I thought there would be a character in this movie named after me. Especially since, like, the name of the team captain of the rival team is the name of, like, one of my very close friends. So the fact that, like, there would be me and him, like, playing on, like, a team together in the fucking future. Like, yeah! I'm throwing my support behind Team Germany here. Oh, that was disappointing. But yeah, he's just like the most cyborgy looking guy in the entire movie. He has like a weird grid over one eye and a huge metal plate out of the side of his head.
To jump ahead somewhat, not necessarily because we are sort of at this point here. So roughly the main story of this movie is there's this Hawaiian liberation terrorist organization that keeps doing these raids, I suppose, on North American soil or whatnot. So Dean Cain, to sort of squash this beef, he basically challenges the terrorists to a Futuresport game, which is kind of amazing, and from that point on, basically, it just made me think of Space Jam the entire time, with this terrorist organization essentially being the Monstars of the game.
I have so many thoughts about him doing this. First off, no government official would fucking allow him to do this. I don't think the league would allow him to do this. Yes, he's like probably the most prolific athlete in the sport, but he doesn't get to call these kind of shots. Is there no fucking GM or like team owner that will say, hey, you're not allowed to draft any of our best players to make this all-star team to settle a fucking war?
Futuresport doesn't appear to have any sort of board of directors or anything. It appears to all be run by Wesley Snipes. And Wesley Snipes seems to have a very hands-off approach to the whole situation. He just kind of hangs out. There's lots of scenes of him just like leaning on walls. But he is the creator of this sport. He should be, sort of the guy in the conference room sort of calling all the shots, but he's very on the ground and very in the middle of everything the entire time.
He doesn't want to go pro. He doesn't want to be a coach or anything like that. He just wants to be Fix.
His original vision for the sport was that this is going to be used to settle all our conflicts. And that may have been its original intention, but it's certainly evolved to something else entirely now. There's a reason why the fucking Olympics don't solve all the world's problems, and that you don't resolve conflicts between countries with, like, a gold medal competition.
But hey, maybe what this movie is trying to put out there, maybe we should be solving all of our all of the world's ails by some sort of organized sport, because, it clearly worked out fairly well for the characters in this movie.
Yeah,
but
as a one-time example. But no, you can't do that, because these athletes are also fucking civilians. And just because it's like, hey, we're gonna settle all our disputes with a fucking friendly competition, with so much at stake, you don't think, like, the other side is gonna be doing some sabotaging of the players or the coaches or their families? Yeah, these fucking public figures who you can kind of track down a lot easier than, like, individual soldiers. This is why they don't do that kind of shit.
Need we repeat the all-important plot point of the fact that these are terrorists? Yeah. Like, the fact that there is, like, one championship game that is going to decide the fate of... They're not just going to stop terrorizing once the game is done, no matter who the victor is.
Dean Cain goes on TV and he says, like, hey, like, Hawaiian Liberation Front, how about this? Our best guys versus your best guys. Fucking winner takes all. We'll see you in a week's time. And then the broadcast should immediately cut to, like, everyone else in the fucking league going, we're not doing that.
I'm sorry, what?
We do not support this man, this crazy guy.
All the league was taken out by spider bots, that's why.
And to the fucking point, like, players on both teams, when they have, like, their individual moments, are saying, like, this is a bad idea. Why the fuck are we doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, the only way that this would actually make any logical sense is if the Futuresport team put together by Dean Cain literally fought a team made up of the terrorists with the guns. That doesn't happen. The terrorists, of course, draft actual Futuresport players to, I guess, play for them.
Well, they draft the players from, like, the other members of the Pan-Pacific teams to play on behalf of the Hawaiian insurrectionists or what have you.
They kind of make it a weird racial thing. Because they also throw in some Russian players as well, too, because we need to really hammer home the fact that these are the antagonists. It did seem like...
They want ownership of Hawaii.
Yes.
You know, that sways the balance of power in 2025.
It did seem like the baseline for drafting players to play for the Hawaiian Liberation Front, it did seem one of the requirements was, how much shit do you have on your face?
Yeah.
Cause they got all of, like, the cyborg looking motherfuckers. They got Jameson, they got a female player who has, like a single eye patch. Like, anyone that has had any, like, augmentation to the facial region, they're just naturally the bad guys, it seems.
So he assembles his fucking dream team of all the members of the other team. They're kind of going through the training montages. He gets his equipment manager, Anarchy, which I assume is like first name Ann, last name Archie.
Yeah. Anarchy, yeah.
Maybe R is the middle initial, so it's Anarchy.
Yeah. Oh, which was stupid. And of course no one wants to fucking go along with this, but they're kind of like, they're just doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, they've been conscripted, basically, into it. They've been drafted in every sense of the word, because this is a sports game in lieu of all-out, years-long war, which plays out exactly the way you would assume it would. Yeah, but there's the coach of Dean Cain's team, who is he might as well be called Coach Deadmeat. Because from the moment he shows up, he's like very fatherly and very caring. He always has nice, encouraging things to say about Dean Cain. And you know that we're going up against literal terrorists. The inevitable thing is going to happen. It was a little confusing, his death. As Cory mentioned, death by spider bot, but I don't really know what it was doing. It looked like it attached two little
diodes,
wires to the back of his neck. Yeah. I don't know how that killed him. It looked like it was like feeding on his brain for information in some way, but he just kind of slumps over and now he's dead.
It always seems the villains only have access to red LED lights. There's never any other colors for the eyes of the robots or the pieces. It's always glowing red.
And it's always like large spider bots.
That was a huge one in the beginning. Like that vent barely contained the legs. And then every other one was like, okay, now that's spider sized. That one makes sense.
Yeah, I don't get why they had to be spiders. I didn't know why they had to be like fucking Halloween decoration size.
There was no spiders.
If it's meant to be a spy cam, it's gotta be, yay big.
No, we don't do small cameras in the future, Jameson. All huge cameras. Doesn't matter what they're attached to. The cameras have to be the size of a football.
Is it a hover camera? No. It needs 8 large legs. But we could just make it hover.
Okay, so what goes on with Wesley Snipes in this movie? Because he seems to have like a very friendly relationship with Dean Cain, but he also sides with the insurrectionists.
He's playing both sides, we find out later. We think the movie is setting Wesley Snipes up to be the not-so-surprised villain, but then it actually subverts that, and I think in sort of a throwaway line of dialogue, Wesley Snipes is like, I was playing along with the terrorists just long enough to take their money so I can give the money to all of these charities, but I'm really on your side.
Because the terrorists started hurting people, which is what he didn't want. He was like, all right, now I'm going to screw you guys over. I'm going to put a cog in your wheel.
Which he introduced, I love how he introduces himself too, when he like hacks their system and has like his face appears on their monitor with like a weird voice filter.
Like Max Headroom.
Yeah. Yeah. And he has a voice filter, and then there's like flashing strobe lights over his face, and he has this moment where he sort of hacks Ramsey's phone when him and Vanessa Williams are in bed together, and it's just his face with a strobe light over it and his voice changed, and one assumes that that's there to hide his identity. The only problem with that is he has a massive face tattoo! So you're not fucking hiding anything. You're the most noticeable terrorist on the planet.
I just like how Dean Cain answers a voice email while he's like cuddling with Vanessa Angel. They're both naked, like, she's dude. Like, pick a time.
Hey man, I'd be bragging too. If I had a late 90s Vanessa Williams in my bed, I'd be showing that off on my camera phone as well too. Hell, if I had a 2021 Vanessa Williams in my bed, I'd be showing that off on the camera phone.
But I mean, she's fucking cool with everything that like Dean Cain's been doing since like their first interview. Like, yeah, she is. For a woman who says that she dumped him, you know, she's very eager to like sort of get stuff back going again, even though he really hasn't changed much as a, you know, personality wise. He's still a bit of
this is a real shit role for Vanessa. She literally becomes the damsel in distress. So it's a really unfortunate, disappointing sort of throwaway female character role in this, but that shouldn't be surprising given what era we're dealing with here. But anyway, after I do love how sort of dismissive the terrorists are of killing the coach of the team, and because Wesley Snipes sort of calls them out for them, rightly calls them out for it, and they said like no one was supposed to get hurt. He said, and the terrorist kind of like shrugs, you know, like, it's one person, you know, like this could lead to like hundreds of people being killed. Wesley Snipes, the founder of this sport, has every right to be all like, you still killed the head coach of one of my premier teams. We can't just sweep that under the rug. That's going to be a major news story.
Yeah, and he's a coach. He's not a fucking soldier. And I'm not meant to say that like, you know, soldiers are expendable in war or whatever, but it's kind of like that's the risk that you take. A coach's life should not be on the fucking line.
But Jameson, you forget, this game is replacing war. So all bets are off. So this leads to maybe one of my favorite moments in the thing. So now with his coach and friend and mentor dead, Dean Cain becomes the new coach of the North American heroes, whatever it is, which leads to the coaching montage. This was fucking great. Because apparently all you need to coach a Futuresport team is pointing and smiling. Dean Cain points at something and it cuts to someone on the team smiling. He's talking, he's pointing at someone else, cuts to someone else smiling. It's that for like a minute and a half. I loved it.
Teamwork.
We're growing as a team.
And like, yes, like player coaches are occasionally a real thing that happens, but they tend to like go to like real level-headed, competent players and not the people who have a lot of problematic ego and attitude problems during and outside of the game. You want someone with like, you know, a cooler head prevailing this. There's a line that he says where like, there have been times where like he never showed up to the game until the last second. So what does that mean? Like he misses fucking warm-ups, he misses the pregame breakdowns with the coach and everything. You don't need someone with like this much of an ego problem in charge of your team when the stakes are this fucking high.
Well, war makes strange bedfellows of us all.
I guess
Jameson.
so.
It's all fair in love and war and Futuresport. That's all I can say.
So yeah, he's like the fucking he's the star player, he's the captain and the GM. I presumably the owner of this fucking like all-star team.
He's everything. Yeah, he's all roles.
So my fucking first move, if I were playing against this guy, is like, okay, well now, how can we if this guy is so integral, this one guy is so integral to the team, let's fucking fuck up his life somehow and compromise him. Let's kidnap his girlfriend. And that's what they do.
Because, again, sorry to keep harping this point, they are terrorists. The fact that anyone entertained the thought that they would play by the rules at any point is highly laughable because they seem to have no problem with widespread murder. Like, they blow shit up constantly throughout this movie.
It shouldn't, if to sabotage, like, you know, the other side is just to, like, compromise one fucking guy, this is why you don't settle wars with a sport.
It did seem like the Hawaiian Liberation Front or whatever, it seemed like their beef specifically was with Ramsey. So the fact that their method of carrying out their unspecific revenge on him was A, kill someone that wasn't him, and B, kidnap someone who is tangentially connected to him. Why not just kill him? They do attempt to kill him at a couple of points, why do they stop?
Like, what's to stop this fucking terrorist group from honoring, the rules of this game where, like, okay, well, winner takes control of Hawaii. Do you honestly expect the terrorist group to honor that good sportsmanship?
So after Vanessa Williams is kidnapped, they're in the locker room. Dean Cain goes to talk to the team, presumably just to tell them that his news reporter girlfriend has been kidnapped and he's leaving to go rescue her. And when they all inevitably rally together as a team and say, we're going with you, he's all like, no, that's silly, you're not going with you. Why go to the locker room in the first place? If you're on this hero's mission, why go tell everyone? He was really banking on them probably changing his... It's a very inauthentic sort of, I don't need your help. No, don't come with me.
I'm just saying what I'm doing. Out loud in a group of people. Listen.
Hey guys, I know I'm the star player and the captain
and the coach,
but I'm gonna bounce.
I'm not valuable at all, so I'm gonna save this woman.
And of course, like fucking hours before they're playing a game that's gonna determine the fate of the free world or something, most of the team says like, okay, we're going with you to like risk injury or death. Like, holy shit.
I mean, I don't know the legalities of being a Futuresport player, but as someone who knows more about sports than I do, are there not, like, legalities around being a professional athlete wherein you legally have to be at an arena during a scheduled sporting event, and if you are not there, I imagine you run into all sorts of problems. I imagine you can be sued if you don't show up for a game.
I mean, that's very rare that something will happen. People can miss games because, like, they missed the team bus, like they fucking slept in. That'll get you into a lot of shit with, like, the coach and team owners and shit, and certainly the fans, but, like, I don't, they're not gonna throw you in jail for it or anything. But hey, that's 2021, who knows what the future has in store.
Who knows what's gonna happen in 4 years? Yeah, anything could happen.
I don't know, I assume, like, it's the exact same thing for, like, when soldiers go AWOL. Like, it's certainly frowned upon and you're gonna get some fucking demerits for it, but, like, it's not gonna be a problem until it becomes, like, sort of a regular thing, and then you're like, fuck it, you're off the team.
I feel like if a soldier, I mean, this is semantics at this point, but I feel like if a soldier goes AWOL, they usually get thrown in jail, don't they? Military jail.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, the Futuresport League goes to the terrorist hideout that they found because Dean Cain has put a tracker on his girlfriend, which is very creepy, but we've glossed over that because he's the hero, so no problem there. They meet Hicks at the building, which is where he reveals he's sort of been working for the bad guys, but not really, but I'm on your side now. And again, they're all kind of all like, yeah, convenient. Yeah, exactly. And then they fight the terrorists. What happens to Tattoo Guy? He ends up dying, right? Or does he just get a ball thrown at his head like everyone else?
Yeah, I thought he just got balled at the end.
Yeah, I think that's
he got future ball. Yeah,
he has a fight with Dean Cain. It seems like thank God the athletes all brought their fucking equipment with them, because otherwise I think the terrorists would have kicked their asses.
Yeah,
which I totally buy into, because like, these guys are, professional athletes, but they're not trained in fighting. Whereas I imagine, like, this militia group is. So if it weren't for, like, anarchy hacking into a hoverboard and having it fly into people's heads, I think most of Dean Cain's team would have lost that fight.
That was one of my more favorite visual images, where there's this skirmish between the terrorists and the Futuresport team. Everyone's fighting with bow staffs and throwing balls at their head, and then right in the middle of all the fighting, Anarchy is just on the ground, click-clacking away on her keyboard. And people are, like, fighting over her, and it's like, there's gotta be a better place for you to do that.
I'm hacking as fast as I can! Hold on!
I'm hacking for the future of the free world.
The board only has a 15-foot radius. I have to be right here.
Yeah. Also, if it seems that easy to fucking hack into, I assumed the person riding the hoverboard controlled that thing. If you're allowed to hack that shit, like, I'm surprised more fucking Futuresport games aren't fixed.
I mean, that raises the question. Anne R. Key, as we will call her from now on, her role is the equipment manager. And as soon as that was announced, I'm all like, okay, so what does that entail? Like, she just, like, has the equipment. She's like, she like has the key for like the ballroom or whatnot. I don't really know. But what this scene perhaps implies is that the hoverboards have someone at the controls of them to a certain extent. Maybe there's someone on the other end of it helping you not crash into walls. I don't know. Questions raised by this move.
Frankly, I think like her role as the equipment manager should only be limited to, say, the padding and the helmets and the visors and stuff, because stuff that has actual electronics in it, like the hoverboards and the balls that can shock people, that seems like that should be handled by the league officiates.
Yeah,
otherwise, they'd be more prone to like, you know, put in like a weird thing that makes the hoverboards go faster. Something that won't shock the players of the home team or something.
Yeah, special gloves or equipment that looks regulation but isn't.
I mean, like, other organized sports that we have currently right now, you know, past sport, those sports have equipment managers as well, too. They don't see him as, I mean, like, all members of any team are integral in some way, but, like, they really play up her importance on this team. And an equipment manager, basically, to me anyway, just seems like someone who just has keys. She's just like the key holder, really.
She has the vans, so she gets to carry all the
shit.
Yeah.
She's one step up from the water person.
Hover boy instead of water boy. I gotcha.
Hover boy. I made Hover boy, Mom.
Okay. So they beat the terrorists, and you know, just in time because they got the big game to win.
Wow, yeah.
But this is my question: if they've already beaten the terrorists, why do they need to play the game anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, one could assume that there are branches of this terrorist organization, and face tattoo. Man, did anyone catch the name of the central villain? I'm just realizing I don't think I know what that character's name is.
Holy shit. Scythe?
Scythe. Alright, so...
That sounds right. Just because it's like one of these garbage, like, future punk movies. That I think that tracks.
Yeah,
so,
Sarah Bourne
like,
was the actor, Scythe. Yeah, Scythe.
So from our perspective, it seems like Scythe is the one in control of this terrorist group, and he ends up defeated by Dean Cain. I don't remember how. I genuinely do not remember how that fight ended up, but Vanessa gave, like, the killing blow, which, like, woo, feminism, yay. That totally makes up for her being kidnapped earlier. But anyway, so, like, he squashed.
The game goes forward because Dean Cain had already, like, set the terms where, like, we gotta settle who owns this island. So, like, the other Pan-Pacific nations said, okay, deal. So, like, they're going forward with their team. So, like, you know, if the Dean Cain's team doesn't show up, then Team North America forfeits, and they automatically get it.
Yes. I mean, that would be bad. They seemingly go through with the end game for publicity reasons, but sort of all of the life or death stakes kind of aren't there anymore, given that terrorist organization has been foiled hours before the game takes place. So it does take a certain amount of the tension away from the final Futuresport game.
That's why Jet, who's now on the opposite team, just kind of gives up, and they're like, okay, we're playing a clean game from here on in, guys. Like, we don't have terrorist backing anymore.
And by clean game, you mean multiple head trauma from people being hit by metal bow staffs.
Street rules.
I'm here to tell you, man, like, there is no championship game where, like, the refs don't put the whistles away. Like, they kind of, like, throw the rule book out the window a couple of times in these cases.
At one point in time, a teammate is injured, and Hicks himself joins the team as a ringer, but very pointedly, all he does is come on and, like, grievously injure other people on the team. The creator of the sport only shows up to beat the shit out of people and then immediately go back to the penalty box.
Yeah.
What a fucking goon.
Just immediately takes out the hoverboard itself just to make that other player fall. It was so good. I'm just here to sabotage things.
No fucking rules. And yeah, I'm sure if, like, anyone on the opposing team there complained to the refs, they'd be the one getting the penalty.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Happened to the Canucks.
Did you see any refs in this game? I don't remember seeing any refs in Futuresport.
No.
Street rules.
So they win.
How they win is fucking incredible. So, like, Dean Cain, he grabs the ball and holds onto it for a little too long, and he, for the first time ever in the history of the sport, rides the lightning.
Rides the lightning and gets that assist.
Gets that assist. Well, I think you might be conflating two different points. Like, that's the second to last goal. That's the goal that ties the game. And he rides the lightning and he gets electrocuted as he's putting it in there. Cause we need to complete his character arc, and his character arc is the winning goal is not scored by him. It's scored by his rival because he gives the assist. So he's learned humility.
Yeah. But the announcer even calls, his teammate's goal like one of the most impressive goals in the history of the sport. It seemed kind of standard.
Yeah.
He was open and he made the shot from the point. I think, Dean Cain surviving getting electrocuted and still making the shot. I think that's a little bit more impressive.
Yeah, being able to lift his arms still. That's great.
But presumably getting electrocuted just seems like another part of Futuresport. It seems to happen constantly throughout the game.
Well, let's add that
to the point where there's the elephant in the room that I don't think any of us have mentioned yet, but I know from my perspective it's because I'm aware of this movie. I haven't seen this movie, either this movie or the remake, which came out after Futuresport. This is also basically just ripping off Rollerball.
Yeah, I'd say 75% of the comments on the IMDb is comments about Rollerball.
Oh, geez, really?
I've never seen the original 1970s Rollerball. I haven't seen the remake with LL Cool J, so I don't know how much this is cribbing from that, but just looking at still images, it seems like a lot. It seems like a decent amount.
Okay.
There we go. I don't know. I just felt like our episode wouldn't be complete if I didn't, at the very least, mention Rollerball was a movie that existed. So there you go, all you Rollerball fans out there.
Which U.S. state was trying to secede in that movie?
Yeah, and that's it. That's basically Futuresport. Is there anything we forgot to mention? Cory, is there anything you wrote down that we didn't talk about that you want to take a second and mention here?
I always just like diving into various actors' IMDb's, and I found it very interesting that the gentleman who voiced the AI, Hodgkins?
Oh, Edgar.
Hodgkins,
okay.
the robotic voice. Funny enough, he's still acting, and he's also been on the TV versions of Blade and Smallville. So very strange connections, but completely disconnected at the same time, because none of those actors were even considered for those. But at the same time, those TV series wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the originals. And again, Lois and Clark was long before that. So I just thought that was interesting that he was involved in both of those projects and then got connected to them through this Canadian Jarvis.
What a fucking Venn diagram that is.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating, which is one of the reasons why I love diving into actors' IMDb's, because you just never know what you're going to find. And I thought that was such a neat connection. Matthew Walker is the gentleman who voiced him, and he's still acting. He's still doing lots of work, which is really, really cool.
Boy, that is fucking Wesley Snipes, Blade TV show, Dean Cain, Superman, Smallville, Vancouver. This guy.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Holy
I bet that
shit.
guy probably busts that fact out all the time when he's just talking with his friends about his career. Yeah. And whatnot, because it really is sort of the Futuresport is the middle of that Venn diagram.
Yeah, I've worked with
actually the middle of that Venn diagram.
Yeah. Since we sort of brought that subject up, it is worth pointing out there's a very hoary Superman reference that Dean Cain forces into this movie against its will. He does say the line, for truth, justice, and the North American way. Mm-hmm. That's one hell of a groaner.
Heavy-handed. Yeah, and he has a girlfriend who's a reporter, a fearless reporter.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, wow. Yeah. This movie was an excellent reminder of why I don't miss seeing Dean Cain in things.
Yeah.
Because he really is, it's not that he's a bad actor, he just has a voice that just really grates on your nerves if you're watching him for more than the length of a TV episode. And I do wonder if it has something to do with the fact that he primarily makes terrible Christian movies these days, and is also an unapologetic Donald Trump supporter. So I don't know necessarily if my current view of Dean Cain has colored his past performance, but no, I think he's just kind of a terrible actor all around. So I'm glad he mostly went away.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who would complain on a TV show about like how he doesn't like working in Hollywood, and then wonders why Hollywood won't hire him. Oh, he's the only actor in the world who's ever had a hard time booking a role. One thing I wanted to mention, I kept like kind of noticing certain things from this movie that would be oddly sort of a glimpse into the future. And one thing that kind of jumped out to me almost immediately was, in the terrorist lair, there's a lot of PPE around. There's all these like plastics that are separating the walls and like covering tables. Dean Cain, after he loses the game, he checks the equivalent of Twitter. You know, where just like any random person can get in contact with him and tell him he sucks. Yeah.
Might as well play my messages.
You suck, Ramsey!
Yeah, so, good premonitions in this movie of the future.
And funny enough, again, about the gentleman who played the Jarvis character, I also looked up our awesome Ronnie Vance, the announcer, and he is a very well-established Canadian voice actor, and I recognized his voice from something.
And Ramsey's goal ties the score at 65 with seconds to go. The rush really coming on strong now.
From my past, and I couldn't put my finger on it. He was the voice of General Hawk in the original G.I. Joe animated series.
Sure I can. I climbed that volcano dozens of times. Okay, so it was 10 years ago. But there are lots of things I did 10 years ago I'm still good at today. Right.
Now, this man is not only still working, but he's done stuff all the way up into Ratchet and Clank as Clank. He's Clank, and he's...
Oh, he's Clank! Oh,
Clank.
cool.
And he's also...
Oh, wow.
He's also one of the few people in the Transformers universe to not only play Optimus Prime, but also play Megatron.
Oh, I fucking love when that happens.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like how Troy Baker voiced Batman and the Joker.
He also went on to... he also played Jarvis and Vision in the Avengers Assemble, which is an animated version of the Assemble. So again, just like the...
I'm kind of not surprised. He essentially played Jarvis in this movie.
More Jarvis, just that, again, another connection where his voice was just like, I just couldn't place it. And then as soon as I pulled up, it's all this Canadian stuff. Beast Wars.
Oh, who is he in Beast Wars? I'm really fascinated now. This is cool.
He was Megatron for the Beast Wars.
Oh, delightful. So Jameson, we've now featured movies that have both Megatron and Optimus Primal in them. So we've got to run down
I thought Megatron was the guy who played Worf.
No, that wasn't Michael Dorn. No, they didn't have Michael Dorn money for a Canadian-based Transformers production. No, sadly not.
Silly name.
Really, the announcer was the voice of Megatron.
And he auditioned originally for Optimus Primal, but ended up getting to be the evil Megatron instead for the Predacons. So cool.
I love how, as the years have gone on, and I've watched like the difference between like the original Frank Welker voiced Megatron, and then you watch the Beast Wars Megatron. Megatron is like 50 times more gay in like the Beast Wars, in the best possible usage of that word. He's just like, oh, Optimus, that is delightful. This is delicious, yes. Like,
Yes.
he is. God, he wants to kiss Optimus so bad, but he hates him.
He scanned one sexy T-Rex when he did his scanning. That is for damn sure.
I remember one episode where Megatron's like lounging in like a robot jacuzzi, basically, and it's like, yes, Optimus. Oh man, that is great. Cory Hicks, bring in the facts. I love it.
Kaz, I can't believe you missed this guy. How did this one escape, like, your fucking laser-guided actor scanner?
I don't know. I was so transfixed on our central trio, on the holy trilogy
of... poster on your wall for so long. I don't blame you for being fixated.
Cain Williams and Snipes as Fix. Anyway, I guess that leads us into the question we always ask. Cory, Jameson, would you recommend Futuresport?
If you're looking for a nostalgic 1980s romp and you are a fan of Canadian architecture, then yes. I say I would absolutely recommend this. It did go down fairly smooth. It didn't feel too draggy. I mean, there was some confusing points, but again, after hearing you guys talk about the movie, it makes a lot more sense to me now. So yeah, I do think I would actually recommend it for some pleasurable viewing.
I wholeheartedly endorse this movie. I had a great time watching this. I particularly enjoyed everything that had to do with the world of Futuresport, meaning like the actual game itself. The plot of like the secession war with Hawaii, I thought was like, really confusing, but that only added to my enjoyment of the movie because I had no idea what the fuck was going on. and how it tied itself to the sport itself. So, fuck it. I thought this was hilarious. I recommend anyone, if you're looking for a super cheesy, future punk movie that makes no goddamn sense, this is a recommend for me.
You basically said it all. Like this movie has exactly that in spades. And yeah, as a fan of tracking down all things shot in Vancouver from the 90s, this is right near the top of this list. As I said earlier, this movie is aggressively Vancouver, far more so than Camouflage was when we watched that. Like, this is like right in the heart of downtown Vancouver, and it's wild because it's supposed to be futuristic New Orleans. So it's great. Like, those two cities very pointedly look the same. Maybe in the future they will. Who knows? Yeah, this isn't offensive. This is fine. I really loved breaking down how Futuresport itself works as a concept. It kind of all falls apart when you really think about it too hard, but I wouldn't be hard pressed to say that I would recommend people watch this, but I will say 14-year-old Kaz is glad that the circle is finally closed. And I've finally gotten to see the story behind that poster.
Was it worth it?
I don't know what else is there to accomplish, really. I've reached the nadir.
Now you know why they're important. They made the front of that cover. Of that poster.
And why they made it so
I have
big.
no idea how I ended up with that poster. I don't. I imagine it must have been, I went to a video rental store and they had that thing where they just had like the boxes of the posters just sitting there. I don't know what compelled me to get the Futuresport I was probably just like the dumb teenage cat just being like, Futuresport! It's got Superman and Blade! Yeah! And then I just never bothered to ever rent it or watch it, but I definitely stared at that poster for many years of my developing youth. So
was this a sci-fi original movie? Like a sci-fi channel? Like in the same way that
I'm not sure. I think it might have been ABC is what I read. ABC original movie. I don't know how often it aired. It feels like this was a real one and done, and let's get this onto DVD as quick as we can to capitalize on Blade, probably.
Yeah. Wesley Snipes is giving us a lot of money so he can be in a movie where he speaks in an indecipherable accent. Better do what he says. Oh, man. Well, Cory, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me. Like I said, it was a great way to spend the afternoon. Like, I was, again, pleasantly surprised at how entertained I was by the movie, by your guys' comments while I was watching the movie.
Oh, thank
you. And just delving into it a little bit more as well. It's as a fellow actor, I love talking shop, and that's exactly what you guys are doing. You're feeding that void right now. Since I don't get to do much acting, I like to talk about it. I like to study it, and I like to dissect it. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks, buddy. It's so great to, I mean, like, I say this a lot off mic as well, too. Like, part of the reason why I enjoy doing this podcast is it's just a phenomenal excuse to catch up with old friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and, like, there's no better reason. It's a great way to catch up with people that I haven't talked to in a while also doing something somewhat creative. Yeah. This is an art. Kind of. This is art adjacent, sitting around talking about things.
Bullshitting is an art.
Bullshitting is an art. We're getting better. You and I are becoming master bullshitters, Jameson. So, you know, but, Cory, please take this opportunity now to plug the things that you are doing. And also, if you've, watched or read or listened to anything recently that you really love, please take this moment to recommend that to however to our dozens of listeners.
Well, I'll plug my photography. If you want, you can check me out on Instagram, Cory Hicks Photos, all one word. I've been shooting for years. A lot of my clients are my friends. So again, I'm still lucky to be kind of in business with that. And with film being still somehow alive during these pandemic times, I'm still getting a little bit of work here and there. So that's nice. And during the pandemic, I've started streaming. So you can check me out at twitch.tv/maxfunk, where I'm currently doing a Skyrim playthrough in character. So I play as my thief character, Steely Dan Madungus, and I allow the chat to decide where we go and what we do. So I give them 3 choices as to a location or as to a quest that we can do, and we just go on the adventure together and we just see what happens. And as you know, Skyrim is pretty unpredictable. I've added some mods that make sure it's unpredictable and has lots of different events and things that can happen at anywhere at any time. And so far it's been a lot of fun. So I've recorded 3 episodes, so we're just kind of diving in. I don't even know about being Dragonborn yet, so we've just been having fun robbing people and going on random adventures.
And on a personal level, I want to thank you, Cory, because as I was watching one of the, not the live Twitch stream, but I was watching the recording of it later after the fact, I was watching it on my phone, because I couldn't get it to work on my oldest ball's laptop. I was watching it on my phone, and then just sort of completely by accident, I ended up turning on AirPlay, and I found out that I could stream shit from my phone onto my TV using my Apple TV. And I found that out completely by accident. I was just dicking around. I'm like, the hell does this do? And all of a sudden you started playing on my TV. So thank you for at least helping me fall into the realization that I can do that, because that's a complete game changer for me. So.
Thank you for dragging him to the 21st century.
I'm so technologically inept. I didn't realize I could have been doing that all this time.
Welcome to Future TV. Welcome to Future TV.
Yes. Jameson, do you have any recommendations this week?
So just last night, I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, on the topic of him coming up earlier and, watching a movie that had a Superman in it. I liked it. I thought it was a better movie than the one that came out in theaters, which was, a pretty low bar. I am kind of blown away by not only how much of a better movie it is, but how much of a different movie it is. Like, there has been so much that Joss Whedon cut out, and so much bullshit he put in. And I'm not saying that it's a perfect movie, because, I have a lot of problems with, what Zack Snyder has been doing with the DC movies. But of all the ones that he's done, I have the least problems with what he did with this one.
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of weird. The Snyder Cut is kind of weirdly the second best movie he's ever made.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's one scene with, there's one really nice scene with, Lois Lane and Ma Kent that ends in a way that I wish it didn't. But, I don't like how he put Superman in a black suit, and I think the ending of the movie had, this weird... It seemed like they were meant to be the post-credit bits.
Yeah.
But he tied them into the end of the movie, where they shouldn't be. But other than that, I thought it was quite good.
Cory, do you have any quick Snyder-verse thoughts since we're on this subject?
No, I definitely agree. I was quite pleasantly pleased with the outcome, and I do agree that there was a lot of stuff that Whedon didn't include, and I think it did make for a better movie. Personally, I'm going to watch it again probably as well. I never saw it, the original, until after it was released in films, and I watched it at home. Really didn't enjoy it, but this made it more of an experience, and it was an experience I enjoyed.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments for the most part. I think the movie as a whole is grandiose and very sort of full of its own self-importance, but it is a mind-blowing improvement over the theatrical cut. That epilogue can go fuck itself, though. That epilogue is pure dog shit. I was enjoying it up until that point. He should have stopped 15 minutes before he did finish, because I'm not a fan of what happens after that. Everything that happens, it's like, okay, now we're back into the Zack Snyder that I'm familiar with.
My least favorite thing from Batman v Superman was that post-apocalyptic nightmare scene that Batman had. And of course, he keeps going back to that well that'll, I hope, never happens.
Yeah.
Give it a goddamn rest, Zack Snyder.
The only thing that I want to recommend this week, it's both a recommendation mixed with, I suppose, a disclaimer based on the last episode that we did. But what I want to do is I want to throw some love out to a YouTuber and an internet reviewer that I've been following for well over a decade now. He's a little bit of an inspiration in the sense, kind of like my humor and what I like to talk about here. His name is Brad Jones, better known as the Cinema Snob. His company is Stoned Gremlin Productions. I've been a big fan of his for years. He makes his own movies. I really love all of his reviews. The disclaimer part of this is what I want to say is, when I was doing my research on The Crawlers, the other Troll 3 movie. I was doing the research. What I discovered is, long ago, like maybe like 10 years ago, Brad Jones himself did a review on Quest for the Mighty Sword, and I watched it, and I discovered to my horror that he basically makes all the same jokes that I do in that episode. So I just want to say I really love his stuff. He's a big inspiration for me. I also want to disclaim, did not know that existed before we did our episode. It's just a pure coincidence that we made the same very obvious jokes about that very terrible movie.
That's the risk that we run, and why we kind of like try not to do movies that have been covered by like the super popular reviewers, because you watch the same thing as these guys, you're gonna notice the same things, so.
Definitely. Well, check his stuff out. And that was Futuresport, directed by Ernest R. Dickinson. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at the F_is_this. For info on when episodes drop, follow us on Instagram at the F is this podcast. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, we also have a YouTube page where we also post episodes, but with pictures. And now, with our episode-specific catchphrase, Jameson Rafter.
Damn hot dog.
Well, I don't give a ding-dong diddly about that. That's just Dada. That's just Dada, and I'm doo-doo.
I'm just doo-doo.
Where are you going? To get her out of this.
I'm coming with you.
No, Anarchy, that's ridiculous. It's too risky.
Damn hot dog, huh?
What?